might I suggest that those of you on the grid require assistance,
they must consider our lives, you know. We are professionals, we try to run, we already try all together to show that we could try to race, but we just cannot, you know. Everyone is just going off, and you cannot even go in third gear on the main straight. And this is just too dangerous. I think somebody's going to get badly hurt if someone is not already hurt after those shunts. And we got to really take in consideration for once our lives, you know.
What's the word you got, pal? Speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, the announcement is official that the race has been cancelled as of 14 laps. The conditions are too dangerous.
the end of 14 laps. That is the official word. The race has been declared at the end of 14 laps, and half points in the championship are going to be awarded. Half points will be awarded. It is an official race. It will count, but half points will be allocated to the drivers. And that is at the end of 14 laps. The situation is, the race has been won by Ayrton Senna, Nigel Mansell, Nigel Mansell in the Williams, Gerhard Berger in the McLaren, Wilson PK in the Benetton, Ricardo Patrese in the Williams, Danny Morbidelli in the Ferrari, and the remaining order, Pirro, De Cesaris, Zanardi, Modena, Leto, Alboreto and Gugelin 1 lap down, and so on. And I would suggest that that in fact will confirm the manufacturer's championship for McLaren, and so that is the situation. I must apologise, ladies and gentlemen, but I think you will appreciate that the decision has been made by people who certainly have given some very careful consideration to the danger of the situation. So that is the position. The race has been officially declared. Perhaps, John Herding, just a brief comment from you down at the chicane.
Thanks, Barry Oliver. Yes, I think everyone's disappointed that the race has been cancelled, but equally I think everyone has a full understanding that conditions are just too dangerous, and I think everyone would agree that the right decision has been made. We'll come back and do it again in 1992.
Okay, we might take this opportunity just to cross up to Stag for some brief comments there before you gentlemen sign off. We certainly appreciate your support, that you might like to make a comment.
Yes, David Ryan, first up, thank you for inviting me, guys. It's been my pleasure to work with the competition team at Adelaide. What a shame that the race had to finish this way, and congratulations to the officials who have done such a sterling job for 3 or 4 days so far, and all the fans for their first.
Ken, thank you very much. Well, I'm down here with 2 drivers. They've just come from the podium right now. Unlike normal, where there would be 3 drivers, Nigel Mansell unable to come to the podium, unable to come to this winner's interview for not only Channel 9, but for the rest of the world because of the ankle injury he sustained in his bang with the wall. It seems there's no great problem there, but he's still not able to come over. Ayrton Senna, must be one of your more difficult races.
I don't think that was a race, first of all, because it was just a matter of staying on the circuit, and it was not a point to try to go quick at all, and it was impossible. We had a race, very bad one here a couple of years ago, and then was impossible, and today was even worse. There was even more water on the back straight, and you could see that all cars were flying away, flying off, hitting the wall, and surely if I was in the lead I had a little more visibility and I could take my time to make sure I would stay on the circuit, but it was just one of those things. I managed to stay on the circuit, but it wasn't a race at all.
In the end, we saw you very clearly signalling with your hands that you wanted very much the race to be stopped. Were you being told on your headset by your team that in fact they were showing the red flag, or did you not hear them at that time?
No, I didn't hear, and it was just then completely impossible to continue because it started pouring heavily water again, and you just couldn't do it. I was just cruising around in second gear everywhere, and so I was asking for the officials if they were looking in the camera of my car to stop the race.
Yes, sir.
And I was not aware that the race had already been stopped, but I only started this race really because there was a lot in stake, and the team did so much to me over these 4 years that there was still the Constructors' Championship for them, and for that reason I started the race. Otherwise I wouldn't have started. There was no point to start the race, so I said, okay, we give a try, but we keep an open mind, and if it's impossible I'll talk to you on the radio and we make a decision if I stop during the race. Otherwise I wouldn't have started.
Well, I take my hat off to you for doing it in that fashion and the way that you drove, because you clearly were under control even though you say you were on the limit. Gerhard Berger, you had 2 incidents, and in fact you had 2 spins, fairly major spins.
Yes, as I had said before, it was very difficult to stay on the road. There was some parts in the race was a little bit better, but when it starts raining again, My tire pressure was very low and I had aquaplaning just everywhere, and it was not possible to control. And the worst thing was to have some spins is okay, even to crash in a wall could be okay, but but the problem was there was a straight where I was staying cars and there was people working on it, and it was just the most dangerous place because there was the big aquaplaning, and you just know all the time if you come there you maybe cannot control it, and there are people on the road, so it was just impossible.
Martini, in fact, did have a spin on the main straight and had heavy contact with the wall. And at that time, I personally, sitting watching our monitor, feared for the marshals and the recovery crews.
I mean, if you go on the wall, if something happened like today, it's your own decision you start or not. If you don't start, you're right. If you start, it's okay. As Ayrton said before, the same reason for me. I started the race because we still was fighting for the construction championship, and the team did really good job this year, and I just try to close my eyes and say, okay, we go. But then if you crash, it's your own decision. But if you crash and there are people what are working on the circuit and you hit somebody, that's not acceptable.
Let me ask you both, because if this situation were to continue, and we're fortunate that this season really we've got off with any serious accidents occurring, but if we were to run into rain conditions of this kind again, is there a better method, Ayrton, for us to look into how the race should be stopped, earlier or more positively?
We shouldn't start.
But whose decision is that, Ayrton?
I think it's very hard for the officials to make such a decision because there is a lot of pressure. Television all over the world, and it's difficult, we understand. But I think it's, in a way, it's our own fault. We should have started as drivers. If we just get out of the cars, stick together and make a decision ourselves, then the race wouldn't start in first place. It's always very difficult to get everyone together. I experienced it myself 2 years ago, today again, because also we have a lot of responsibility to the teams and the sponsors that give us so much, and there are moments that we have to also try to give them something, but it's very difficult to find the equilibrium, the balance on making the right decisions at every single time. But as I said, I think it was a mistake to all of us to have started, not only from the officials, it was also a driver's mistake, it was a team's mistake. We all should have had courage as a group, everyone that is here, to get together and go against it and not start the race. So it's not officials only. I also take responsibility, think as drivers, and also the team, everyone is responsible for the race having been started.
Well, you hear it from the man who won this Grand Prix of Australia.